Hi, I'm Mark. I want to pick up on part of what Nora was reading about how we can be curious and how we can celebrate and make use of our differences. And I want to suggest that our differences maybe go deeper than we often think about, into the very depths of our thinking and our realities. Robert Fulghum says this: "Look around and see the infinite variety of human heads, skin, hair, age, ethnic characteristics, size, color, and shape. And know that inside, such differences are even greater. What we know, how we learn, how we process information, what we remember and forget, and our strategies for functioning and coping." This came home to me a few years ago in the workplace. A lot of what we were doing had to do with making charts and graphs. And one colleague was always choosing colors that to me looked very similar. In particular, he'd use blues and yellows, but then he'd have 2 or 3 shades of red that to me were very hard to tell apart. Turned out, as we talked about it, he saw them completely differently because he had a condition called red-green color blindness. He literally didn't see red and green colors. They were all shades of gray to him. Turns out that's an inherited condition that affects mostly males, and affects nearly 8 out of every 100 men. Of course, he lives in a completely different visual world than me, or maybe most of you. Things like restaurant menus and computer screens look completely different to him than to us. And in particular, things like warnings or things that are read in red type to be special attention don't show in any particular way to him. So he's navigating in a different world. These changes in visual perceptions and the way we process information are also very widespread, and we often don't recognize how numerous and how deep they go. Some people catalog information in kind of list forms, and they have database brains. Some people are very conceptual, and they see things in very conceptual ways. And there are many other dimensions in which the world that we live in is utterly different. I think what's important to me is to think of these. For me personally, it's often very annoying when I'm thinking differently than someone else, or I come up with someone else where they're just not understanding what I'm trying to do, or I can't understand what they're trying to do. And as Nora's reading was saying, to be curious about those, to think about that as an asset, as a very valuable part of the variation of the human species, is a very powerful way of transforming that. And we need all these different viewpoints. Another statement by Robert Fulghum: "We are as different from one another on the inside of our heads as we appear to be different from one another on the outside of our heads. Add to that the understanding that the world out there is pretty much a projection from inside our heads, as it is a perception. And pretty soon you're up against the realization that it's a miracle that we communicate at all. Be patient with others. They may be living on a different planet, and that's okay.